Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm joined by my friend from the Makeshift Tribe. Introduce yourself and say your name, I suppose.
Namaste. My name is Kushadas, legally known as Erik Zollinger. But Kushadas is my spiritual name, and in spiritual circles, that's kind of usually what I go through or go as.
That makes sense. Thank you very much for joining me on my channel today. And so today, everybody, we're going to talk about Shiva. Now, I'm a devotee of the Divine Mother Kalima, of course, and a lot of you know that. But we have not talked about Shiva as much as we should have. So this episode is going to be dedicated towards Shiva, and I will be kind of asking my friend here a few questions about Shiva. So as far as Shiva goes, how is he different from Kalima? How does his specific energy manifest in a different way than Kalima?
To me, besides the obvious of the male and female aspect of the divine energy, with one being more stagnant and the other being the opposite, where it's always moving.
Mm-hmm.
They both represent destruction, but destruction can mean two things. Shiva destroys the world after so many years at the end of the Kali Yuga. So he is a literal destroyer. Kali is also a literal destroyer, but she can also destroy your worries. She can destroy your fears, whatever, because she is the mother aspect. Um, to me, the father aspect of Shiva, as in they call him the Mahadev, the Lord of Lords, he is the God of gods. Um, as a child, you don't usually run to your dad first if you get hurt. Most like I did, I ran to my mother first. So
Mm-hmm.
it's to me more of a, wouldn't say a hierarchy thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just a respect thing, I think, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Does anybody have any questions as far as Shiva goes in general? All right, so I'll go ahead and pose my next question. So when it comes to Shiva, we obviously see a lot of the time, we see that the Divine Mother Kalima is stepping upon Shiva, like the tapestry behind me. So for you, I have my own meaning to it, and from what I've learned. But what does it mean when Kalima steps on the chest of Shiva? How does that teach us something? What is that lesson?
Well, it's funny because there's so many different ways that it can be interpreted, um, and it's beautiful because from my understanding is we've got Kalima who is destroying the demons, who is the only one who can save the world. She's fighting demons who, as soon as the demon's blood hits the ground, a new demon appears.
Mm-hmm.
So she drinks the blood of the demons. She's carrying the heads.
Mm-hmm.
She's ready to be done with what she needs to do, but she is so filled with rage that she keeps dancing because she's won. So she's destroying the corpses. She's smashing them into bits.
Mm-hmm.
And gods look at Shiva and say she needs to be stopped, otherwise she will destroy the world. The kind of the opposite of what she was doing in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Shiva being who, like it said to me, the Mahadev being the Lord of Lords, he lays himself down underneath Shiva or underneath Kali, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And as she's down, what a lot of people will say steps on his heart, she looks and sees that's my husband, that is my consort, that is the man that I love, for lack of a better terms. And I think that, especially in Indian culture, to touch someone with your feet is considered really disrespectful, disgusting,
Mm-hmm.
because you're always on your feet. You're using your feet all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can interpret it as when she sticks her tongue out, that's a folly. That's a whoops. That's kind of my bad. But a lot of murti, a lot of Kali statues will show Shiva smiling, that he's not upset, that he is happy, that he is stopping her from destroying the world, that you have done your part, my lady. Now come rest with me. So that's kind of what I see it as, is Shiva humbling himself and saying, it's time to go home. Let's go
Mm-hmm.
home.
That makes a lot of sense, and very similar to my interpretation. I do recognize that, in India, a lot of the time when somebody sticks out their tongue, we see this in iconography in India a lot. When somebody sticks out their tongue, they're like, "Oh, I messed up," or "I made a mistake," and going too far, and even to the point that she's stepping on Shiva. It definitely was a mistake for her, but it also, when it comes to energy and matter in this realm, not in the astral world, in the astral realms, it is different. But in this realm, energy kind of inhabits matter. Matter is basically solid. It doesn't move as much. Everything is ultimately energy, but matter is on a lower frequency. So when Shakti or Kalima steps on Shiv, we're basically seeing that energy is inhabiting matter in this realm, whereas in astral realms it is reverse. Does that analogy make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can kind of apply it as, even in the scientific term, to me, like what an object at rest stays at rest, an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon. So those energies that Kali's giving off, she's dancing, she's stepping on the earth, and she's smashing the demons even after they're already dead. And she's giving off that energy. And the more energy that she builds and the more that she creates, it's like, well, that's a little bit too much. So that's when Shiva has to step in, and kind of along the lines of what will keep moving until it's stopped. And I think that was, Shiva's way of saying that's enough. Like I said, enough energy. The energy is too much right now. And, like I was saying before, you'll hear people say that Shiva cannot be without Shakti and Shakti cannot be without Shiva, because Shiva is dormant, whereas Shakti is what helps him move. Shiva creates, Shakti helps perpetuate, those types of things. Whereas the same aspect is when Shakti gets too much, Shiva steps in and says that's enough. So it's a good correlation, especially, when you're thinking beyond our realm into the astral realm, the three worlds, that those energies are correlating regardless of where you are. And like you said, the energies can be reversed once you get to the next realm. So yeah,
all right.
I definitely see it.
So somebody else from Makeshift Tribe, Josh over here, had a question. What is your question, Josh?
I was wondering, is there anything too sacred or divine for Shiva to deconstruct or destroy?
So is there a kind of divinity that he would destroy? Or
I'm just saying, is there anything that's out of the bounds of deconstruction or destruction
to
begin with?
Is there anything outside of the necessity of deconstruction and, destruction for Shiva, but really the understanding is deconstruction? But is there anything outside of that Shiva would not need to deconstruct?
I don't know. I think, the one thing, in my opinion, that lives on is the soul, your Atman. And, that's Shiva. I don't believe Shiva would have any need to ever destroy a soul. Like when he destroys the world and rebirth, those whose karmas are good or enough will receive moksha, whereas those who are bad in the next world will become what they are, or vice versa.
That makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to kind of ask your opinion or your understanding of various things that Shiva has on his body. So we're talking about the serpent around the neck. What does that represent?
To me, it's a fearlessness and destruction of ego. The snake represent our egos, as we can be very venomous. We can be very non-deadly and still look that way. So to me, that is his conquering of ego. That is him saying, I have no ego. I realize I am soul. To me, that's always, as soon as I saw that, I said, that's just the ego. That's ego being destroyed.
Isn't there, I'm not sure if this is part of the Shiva Purana or not, but isn't there a time when Kalima grabs the throat, or Shakti grabs the throat of Shiva when he's drinking poison to stop the poison from going into his system? Do you remember that that part of the story? I honestly in the past have wondered, like, what is the poison that Shiva would have swallowed if Kalima or Shakti didn't grab his throat? What does that poison represent? Do you have any perspective on that?
Well, in the literal story, they're churning the milky ocean to receive Amrita, which is the nectar of life, which is what grants them immortality. Lots of things come from the ocean, including the goddess Lakshmi, is where she comes from, was that ocean. But the poison that came was called, I believe it was called Hala Hala. I could be wrong, but no one else was able to drink the poison except Shiva. So he did that. Shakti, knowing even though that he is Mahadev, knowing that that's his husband, cares about him, was worried that it would actually kill him. So, so that's why she covered his throat. Some to interpret that she actually choked him to stop it from entering the rest of his body, which is where he nail cap, which is blue throated. And so the poison itself, it's so powerful. It can represent something as like our sins or our bad karmas that we just can't handle anymore. Like for me, I deal with anxiety and OCD, and sometimes when I'm doing puja or even just darshan, it's just sitting in meditation and looking at my image or my shivling, I'm literally offering my anxiety. Though it may be bad to me, Shiva is very easy to please, so I offer my anxiety, saying I need this rid of me. And that's kind of what I look at drinking the poison was no one else had that option. No one else could do it. So Shiva said, I will do it for you. In a perspective too, you could think of it as like a Jesus Christ way. Jesus was the only one that could bear the sins of man. So Shiva was the only one who could drink this poison that threatened the entire universe.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and very similar to my own interpretation. So, when I first read that story, I was like, what could this poison possibly mean? But it does make sense, and I think a lot of it has to do with undifferentiation. So Shiva does not differentiate between nectar and poison because he realizes all is the same thing. So it makes sense that he would start drinking poison. Now, as far as it's actually affecting Shiva, I don't think it would have. But Kalima or Shakti grabbing his throat, that's an example or a show of her love for Shiva, and not necessarily actually saving his life per se. Another thing is, it's actually a very simple thing, but a lot of people don't understand. Why is Shiva covered in ash? Why does he smudge himself with ash everywhere? Now, my interpretation is probably the same as your interpretation, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on why he covers himself in ash, usually.
There's a interesting story that talks about a gardener. He's out gardening, and he really loves what he does, and he takes very good pride in that, and he accidentally cuts his finger off, and grass and life comes from his fingers. And Shiva visits him and says, why are you so happy about this? Everything I do is death. And so when he cuts his finger off, ashes pours out. And he says, these things are not permanent. So the way I interpret it is, like it says in the Bible, we began as ashes, so we will return. So these bodies are going to break down, even if you become buried or cremated, no matter what, it breaks down. And so that's one way I look at it. The other way is kind of a superficial that it's really cold in the Himalayan mountains, and on Mount Kailash is always covered in snow. So the ashes keep this kind of a little thing I like to think sometimes.
For sure. That makes sense. I do think that the ash that Shiva covers himself with, he's covering himself in the ash of things that needed to be destroyed, not necessarily just destruction for its own sake, but things that are truly destroyed because they needed to be and will benefit other beings. He more than willingly covers himself in ash, just like Kalima might wear a skirt of arms or wear the heads of demons. Of course, there's a multitude of explanations for the Kalima example because when it comes to the skirt of arms, it can also be interpreted as the negative or the sinful actions of her devotees, offering that up to her, and then she one by one adds them to her skirt. And of course, we have the head necklace, which represents the 36 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, meaning that she conquers logic. She's not conquered by logic; she conquers speech, but is not conquered by speech. And we see multiple levels of understanding with a lot of iconography and symbolism with Kalima and Shiva. So with Shiva, in layman's terms, how would you explain? So we have this big U. For anybody out there who might not understand this, we have this big U, and then we have a dot in the middle, and then maybe 3 lines through the U. Would you like to explain kind of what that means when Shiva is wearing that?
Yeah. So the 3 lines is called the Tripunda. There are multiple representations of that: life, death, rebirth. It can even represent Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the destroyer, creator, and preserver. When you see the U shape that goes kind of down through your nose and then with the line, that is for Vaishnavas, people who worship Vishnu. I've seen different iconography and different pictures of Shiva with it actually only has 2 lines. But generally, any time that you see it with the 3 lines, if it's on someone like you and I, there's the center dot, that's the red one. And then with Shiva, it's his third eye. the third eye is always in the middle, whereas we have our third eye chakras. Shiva's is a third eye that stays shut until it needs to be. Yeah, I usually do the Trikunda when I do big pujas and big worships. I use actual sacred ash, and I like to sometimes pretend and think like Shiva's actually got it tattooed on his forehead instead of just with ash, just because it sounds like something that's different and off the wall, which is how my brain works. So, but yeah, that's kind of what it represents. Is just the multitude of the Trinity. A triangle is the sharpest and the most permanent of symbols to me because the edges come together at a point where they can't be broken.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes a lot of sense. And so, there's when you mention the third eye, and he only opens it when he needs to. We come back to that story of Kama, him destroying Kama by opening his third eye, and Kama, of course, is desire. And but in a way, Kama kind of succeeded in that Shiva did have a desire for Shakti or Kalima. I've always kind of wondered about, is that just humans trying to superimpose who we are onto the gods, or is there an idea behind that story when it comes to Shiva, succumbing to Shakti or Kalima? Is there any information on that you'd like to share, or is that just, or should we take it at face value?
Oh, it's interesting because Kama came, in one interpretation, Kama came to Shiva when Parvati was trying to more or less get Shiva's attention. Sati dies, she immolates herself, and then Shiva destroys Sati's father's entire kingdom. And then Shiva is, well, for lack of a better term, depressed. So he goes into a deep meditative state, and Shakti comes in the form of Parvati. And Parvati does everything she can to get Shiva's attention, all the way up until the point where she brings Kama with her. For a better understanding of Kama, think of him as like an Indian Cupid. He shoots you with an arrow of love, and you fall in love, those types of things. But she brings that desire. She offers it to Shiva. This is desire. This is what I want to give you. And when he shoots that arrow for her, and it hits Shiva, and it breaks that meditation, it takes a lot to break Shiva's meditation. But it shows that you cannot seduce Shiva, for lack of better terms. You cannot seduce him, which is where I think in a literal terms is where we need to be, is of burning desires, of not being seduced by things, which I know I'm guilty of things that are either impure to me or things that I know I shouldn't do that I still give into. Literally a burning of those desires. I like to take that as a very literal thing. Like you said, a lot of humans can project what they want to the gods, so what they want that to believe. I agree with that. You kind of make it to whatever understands to you. But in that same sense, it is very easy to see only what you want to see and pick that out and project what you want onto it. So I'm glad you said that, because there is a very, very fine line. But I do recognize that difference.
Excellent. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining me, Erik. I feel like this will be a multi-part series because there's some other stuff to cover. So this is I'm thinking I'm going to name this part 1. Thank you very much for joining me, and we can keep on talking for a little bit after. But is there any just quick advice you would give to anybody who's seeking out Shiva, something you need to watch out for, or just advice in general about what he can do for you? Whatever kind of advice when dealing with Shiva you can give at the end here would just be good.
I came to Shiva through Kalima. When I first discovered everything, I thought that I was a Shakta, where I'd worship the divine energy as Brahma, or the supreme reality.
Mm-hmm.
So what I believe is however you find your awakening, regardless of if it's Shiva, Shakta, Vishnu, Ganesh, whatever, go with it. Don't try and say, I want to be this. So if you say, I want to worship Ganesh only, but you're feeling drawn to Shiva through Ganesh, go with it. Don't fight it, because if Mahadev gets you, he'll get you. But don't think of that as a bad thing either. So my opinion is go with the flow.
I completely second that. Thank you very much for joining me, man. I'm sure everybody out there will see further parts to this. At any rate, if anybody wishes to contact me, questions about this video, questions about Shiva, contacting other people, Feel free to message me at www.facebook.com/hunter.salazar. Would you like to give any plugs yourself, or are you good?
Really, if you want to find me on any social media, it's at ERIK_NONE.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and I hope to see all of you on the channel in the future.